There are three new stories I want to bring to you today. The first involves who may or may not be in control of West Ham United in the future. The second is a story about the current feeling by the board about the manager, David Moyes. And the third story relates to the legal action being considered by one of our squad members and his representatives. Look at that. Three stories for the price of one. In fact, no price at all, as my content is always 100% free, which is why you should subscribe to this channel by clicking on the subscribe button somewhere along there and clicking on the like button and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. Anyway, let's get on with it. It has been reported that the second largest shareholder of West Ham United, Daniel Kretinsky, is not a happy man. It has been suggested that Kretinsky is unhappy with certain elements of how the club is run. Now, at this stage, we've no knowledge of what those elements might be. It could be that he's unhappy about the footballing side of things, such as transfers, player recruitment, the manager, playing style, and so on. Or it could be that he's unhappy with the business side of things, which could affect his investment interests, as in the possibility of ultimately leading to a negative impact on his return on investment in the club. With only 27% voting rights, 27% of shares at the club, Kretinsky is alone and unable to force any changes that he believes might improve things. Therefore, in order to effect change, he would have to create an alliance with either David Sullivan, who's got a 38.8% stake in West Ham, or Vanessa Gold, who currently holds 25.1% in the club. Or, of course, he could try to buy more shares in West Ham to try to become the major shareholder. He could buy out Vanessa Gold, and with the Gold shares combined with what he currently owns, he could become the major shareholder with a 52.1% stake in the club. But as I've said several times in the past, I don't think for a minute Kretinsky is remotely interested in becoming the outright majority shareholder of West Ham. After all, as you may already be aware, Vanessa Gold, she's got a 25.1% stake in the club at the moment. That will soon be reduced down to 15.1% because she's currently looking to sell 10% stake that she inherited from her late father and her late sister. But Kretinsky has shown no interest in buying this 10%. But even if he did, his overall stake in the club would still be around about 2% shy of Sullivan's sharehold. So he would have to actually buy Vanessa Gold outright, not just the 10% she's offering, but the other 15.1% as well to become that major shareholder. So I don't think that's going to happen. But there are a couple of twists that could happen. The first is that should Kretinsky increase his stake at West Ham to 30% or more, it would trigger a full takeover bid. Any shareholder with 30% or more share right in any business must make a mandatory offer in cash at no less the highest price paid for shares during the preceding 12 months. Now, I don't for 1 minute think that Kretinsky would want to go that far in waging a takeover bid at the club. Furthermore, in order to add to that, he would have to become a minority shareholder at his Czech club, Sparta Prague, where he currently holds 40% ownership of that club. He has spoken passionately about Sparta in the past, and it's not likely that he would want to give up ownership of that club anytime soon. And the second twist goes back to Vanessa Gold's 10% that she's currently offering for sale. She's had these shares on offer since around about October, November of last year. She's approached Rothschilds to manage the sale for her, but to date, we've yet to hear if there are any serious bidders for these shares. It was suggested that after the failed bid for Man United, there may have been Qatari interest in acquiring these shares in order to get a foothold into West Ham United, but that hasn't materialised. There were also rumours that the American businessman Robert Kotich may have also been interested in acquiring some shares in West Ham, but that's all gone quiet as well so far. And once Vanessa Gold sells her 10% stake, there's no way of knowing whether she will want to hang on to the remaining 15.1% or end up selling those as well. Added to that, if Kretinsky is really unhappy, as reported, and if he hasn't shown any interest in trying to become a majority shareholder in West Ham, he could go the other way. And just like Vanessa Gold, he might decide to sell his stake in West Ham United as well. So the combination of the Gold and Kretinsky shares amount to a majority 52.1% stake in the club. Now, imagine if someone wanted a pathway into West Ham, bought the initial 10% off Vanessa Gold, then bought her remaining shares, and also approached Kretinsky for his as well. In fairness, the Gold and Kretinsky shares would initially have to be offered to those other shareholders in West Ham at the moment. But if Sully and any other minority shareholder wasn't interested, could that lead to someone out there buying out West Ham bit by bit and becoming the new owner? Watch this space. Staying with the board, various comments have been attributed to the senior source of late over the past weeks regarding the situation over David Moyes. Whilst West Ham fans continue to question why the board are not making a decision about Moyes' future, one way or another, the board itself do not want to seem to be making any rash decisions over the manager's future. This may have been perceived as board procrastinating because they're now uncertain what they want to do with Moyes over a new contract. If you remember back at the end of the calendar year, after a good run of results, it seemed to be nailed on that David Moyes was going to get a new deal. However, since then, our performances have been poor and we haven't won a game since that win over Arsenal back in December. And one of the reasons suggested for our poor form, for our poor performances, is because the players are affected by not knowing who our manager is going to be next season. Personally, I don't buy into that, to be quite honest with you. For me, the reasons for our poor efforts, poor performances, are a combination of poor team selection, poor tactics, coupled with injuries and absences at the AFCON. They're the more realistic reasons why we haven't been performing very well over the last few weeks. And whether players are worried about David Moyes being here at the end of at next season or not, I think, to be quite honest, at this stage, is a bit of an irrelevance. There were suggestions that the board didn't want to back Moyes and invest further in the squad in the January transfer window because of the indecisiveness again over his future, hence not sanctioning anything other than loan deals. But the latest comment that has come from the senior source seems to suggest that this may not have been the case. Although the board are concerned about the team's recent performances and their form and the results, they still are hoping that David Moyes can turn things around. But as we now have been told, he needs to make improvements quickly to regain confidence. And the senior source added, sometimes it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. That's a massive clue as to where the board really stands over David Moyes. They want to see improvements, absolutely. But they also want to offer him a new deal. They think overall, over the past 4 years, he's done a sterling job at West Ham United. But they're kind of hedging their bets, aren't they? They're kind of saying, look, David Moyes, get it sorted and you'll get your new deal. But if you don't get it sorted, then we're going to probably have to pull the plug. Now, no timescale's been given. I know last week we talked about 4 games David Moyes had, but that hasn't been corroborated. It was a rumor out there. I reported it, and I know some other channels did as well. But if that is true, then I guess he's got 3 games to go. But for me, I still feel that a decision could be forced on the board once we know the outcome of our Europa League our next 2 Europa League games. which of course come in the middle of March. And finally, on to Lucas Paqueta. The player and his agency, Rock Nation Sports, are becoming quite frustrated over the FA taking a long time to make a decision regarding the betting irregularities that are hanging over the player's head. Whilst the FA continue to delay a decision as to whether or not they will charge the player over suspicious betting patterns in Brazil, the player's agents, Rock Nation, are thinking about taking legal action against the FA in order to force their hand. What they want to do, quite clearly, is they want this sorted out before the next summer transfer window is open, because they know that if this is still hanging over Paqueta's head when the transfer window opens, it could scupper any formal bids being made for the player. Great for us, I guess, but not necessarily great for the player and the agents. There is talk that Paqueta's agents may decide to threaten the FA, as I've said, with legal action so that the case can be decided sooner rather than later. They either want the player to be officially charged so that they can argue their case, or if there's not enough evidence, they want the FA to drop the charges completely. To avoid any legal threats, this could then force the FA's hand, and if they believe they do have enough evidence to make a charge, they will go ahead and charge the player for betting irregularities. This would then move to the FA's independent regulatory commission to make a decision on the outcome of Paqueta. And Paqueta's agents, they believe that they can prove that he's innocent well before the summer transfer window opens. So what they want to do is try and force the FA's hand, either charge the player or drop the charges completely. And if they threaten legal action against the FA, then it might force their hand to do so sooner rather than later. That's it. There'll be another show coming up when there's more news. Thank you for watching. Like I said earlier on, please do hit the subscribe button, the like button, and the bell notification, which will let you know when I'm next on. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you all soon.